We are still on the lunch break in the questioning of Donna Mclean, the woman who was deceived into a long-term relationship by the undercover officer Carlos Saraki. The last video I did with Dan Gilman cut off very suddenly.
Dave Smith's fault.
Dave Smith's fault. He joined the video and then it all went pear-shaped. They've gone off to have their lunch now. I'm joined with Chris Bryan of the Undercover Research Group, regular colleague in this particular thing. I just wanted to go back online again to apologize for the tech problems, the numerous tech problems we've been having, and just a bit more of a chat, because I think we had still had plenty of things left to say. And I just wanted to pick Chris's brains a bit about what we've heard from Donna today. What have you made of it?
I mean, Donna's evidence is very clearly, eloquently given. Yeah, really flowing, and like obviously in some ways I don't know if it's true, but in some ways I guess she'd like maybe separated herself that she was at a public inquiry and thought about it as like another event when she was doing her book launch. I mean, because obviously there's a bit more pressure here, but I can imagine that if you stick to what you said before in the book, that she's expressed that. Highly recommend the book, by the way.
Yeah. Small Town Girl, available from all good bookshops, some bad ones.
Yeah, I mean, actually, all the women who have written books or chapters in books, they all have one thing in common. They're all, other than the stories themselves, which is they're all really well written.
I would really recommend actually that one of the things that Donna was able to do is when she gave her statements to the inquiry, it was just 2 pages.
Yeah,
because she was able to go, I put everything in my book, so she was just able to submit her book. So if you are expecting to give evidence at the inquiry, if you're one of the many people who watches these videos who expects to be giving evidence at some point in the later future, write a book. It'll make it a lot easier when it comes to actually submitting your evidence to the inquiry.
Yeah, you can just say talk to the book.
Literally. Yeah. I mean, it was very. I mean, like, a great many of the questions that were for her were based on things that she'd put in the book and asked to extrapolate on and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I read the book when it came out, and I was aware of the story before that. But I mean, it's still very moving to hear it again, and as well as disturbing some of the details. I mean, there was one thing which isn't in the book. One detail I thought, which was about his story of his sister's sexual abuse.
Yeah, I mean this whole thing of the sexual abuse. I mean, just if those of you who haven't listened, there is in the description of this video there is a link to the audio, because it was only broadcast by audio of Donna's evidence this morning. The sexual abuse, which was the first time I'd heard about it was when Joe Batty talked about this. That Carlos Saraki claimed that on the death of his father, which apparently was true, apparently his father did actually die, he concocted a bullshit story that his father had been sexually abusing his sister as a child. There was a lot of detail to this, that she was orally and anally raped so as not to cause pregnancy. This is at the same time as he'd already showed a lot of people the fact that his father had been physically abusive towards his mother. But this extra layer, which supposedly hit him like a ton of bricks, it meant that when he came back from Italy in the January of 2004, he was a different man. And he spent a great deal of time sort of emotionally being soothed by Donna and also Joe Batty for this horrific made-up story, which he used as part of his exfiltration.
I mean, as Donna clearly said, absolutely no need or reason for it, even if you accepted the need for the deployment. Obviously, Donna didn't, and we don't. But there's just it's just gratuitous. It's just it's when you hear it, even though you heard it, it was like, what? I mean, and obviously we spoke about it before. So many of the exit stories involve some kind of traumatic event. Someone's being ill, they're being ill, something that's happened in their past they have to reckon with. It's just totally. I mean, there's so many other sort of like banal reasons to disappear. Some of them did use banal reasons or just disappeared and nobody actually noticed that they'd gone.
She talks about it as being the cruelest thing that he did. I mean, when you consider the the emotional manipulation of her in so many other ways, the fact that this was the cruelest. I mean, she called it evil. I think it is.
Pure evil, isn't it? I mean, and the fact that he now. I mean, and then we come to the fact that he denies a few of the details, that the marriage proposal, as well as that particular element of the story. Excuse me, sorry. And that is, I mean, this is one of those points where you're thinking the lies that he's maintaining are purely for his current partner.
Yes, yeah.
This is what he's told her, and his remaining friends, if he has any remaining friends, assuming he does.
I mean, I also imagine for his sister, because he's made up this story about her being sexually abused. I mean, you'd think that she'd be quite upset by that.
You would have thought so, wouldn't you? Yeah, I mean, it's like...
I think it's really telling. One of the things he did was he swore secrecy. Swore Donna to secrecy, and Joe Batty, in fact, on this topic. Very effectively used as a means when he did disappear, when people were like, oh, what happened to him? Joe was saying, oh, you know, he's had it's really bad trouble. You know, he's in a terrible state. But the fact that Donna didn't even put it in her book shows how strong. Because I think when something's that traumatic, that disturbing, you don't want to share it.
No, I mean, I wasn't even sure we were going to say it now. I didn't really want to. But,
no, fair enough.
But it's like...
I think it's really important because this is what they did in terms of, you know, their use of trauma was very much about manipulating people, you know, and talking about things which people don't want to repeat, but which then like kind of bond you to them because they've shared this thing with you. This sort of behavior is trained. I mean, it's not something that people just decide. Like, they all did things like this. I don't believe that they all came up with them independently of each other.
I mean, I suppose it also speaks to the kind of people they were. That you know, to come up with a story like this, you need to be the kind of person who would choose to go undercover and deceive people into relationships in the first place. So I suppose it's just like one more step down that dark path, really.
Yeah. I mean, I guess so. But I mean, it is. Like you say, I mean, it speaks to the kind of people they are to manipulate people to that extent, but to go that extra step, I mean, I just really.
I mean, it's still, I've probably repeat it, but it's incredulously awful. I mean, it's just, I don't know what to add to that. But I mean, also, obviously, one of the other things which happened on that night of the proposal was him Saraki encouraging people to go and firebomb this supposedly fascist-owned charity shop, and this is all on the same night as the proposal, which I think I probably hadn't clocked. Obviously, I'd read that in Donna's book, but it was only when I think probably with Joe was talking about it in his testament. It's like that's just those two things together. And Donna actually talked about it in terms of it being a distraction in some way, like that he'd sort of tried to get, done this thing in terms of getting people to encourage to set fire to a shop, a premises, and then maybe to like try and maybe get people to forget he'd done that, make this proposal, so that would be the thing that people remembered about the night. Is that? I mean, was that what she was getting at?
I mean, I guess I think there was also an element with which it was like, oh, there's this place around the corner. Obviously, I can't go and firebomb it because I've just proposed to someone. But you guys, you guys crack on.
Or yeah, I mean, it just seems a very odd thing to do, isn't it? On the night,
incredibly odd. But I mean, I think this. Do you know what it made me think of was when Peter Francis was talking about his exfiltration, and when he was like he'd gone to Spain and there was this whole really complicated story, and he put his bank card with a number, the code number in a phone box, and he set fire to the van. All of the things which seemed to be totally unnecessary. Yeah. And it was almost as if they were so deep in this sort of espionage world.
Oh yeah.
They had to do espionage-y things.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the whole paranoia, and what I think is described, is it in the closing report, that they have this like totally disproportionate fear for their own lives, which isn't based in any kind of reality.
The exaggeration of perceived risk.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess this could all be part of it. They have to, as far as they're concerned, they're in this web of intrigue and danger, and this is all part of sort of like the added part of that, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah, it is deeply disturbing and unpleasant. And what I find really, he came back with this story in the January of 2004. They remained in a relationship, though he moved out in the May until November. Yeah, and appear to be haunted by these issues. I mean, this is the best part of a year he's spinning this thing for.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's just like another element which is like totally, obviously. So Donna was aware that something had changed in the relationship, and she talked about that. But then rather than, so he came up with this exit story, but he didn't exit. Right. He hung around, continuing to basically disrupts Donna's life.
Yeah, no, it was. Yeah, as I've already said, she described it as evil, one of the worst things that he did. Is there anything else about her evidence from today you'd like to chat about?
Was the other things about how much contact he had with her family and how friendly he was to them?
Incredible. I mean, like so deep.
Yeah, phoning them up. Not just phoning up with her. Obviously, we talked about him phoning her mum the night he proposed, but again, obviously a thing he denies. But also just independent contact with Donna's family, basically. I mean, she talked about all the gifts that he bought her. Did he buy gifts for his family as well? Didn't he? And there's just this whole, totally unnecessary. I mean, added. Awfulness. I mean,
there seemed to be a real element of largesse about his entire deployment. I mean, his cover story. I mean, initially he claimed to be a locksmith, and then he claimed he was someone who was importing Italian food and going on these little trips over to Italy and bringing back various sort of gourmet items, which meant that he always was bringing home bits and pieces of that for the home. I think, I mean, he was very keen on cooking. Donna talks about how he completely changed her home and kind of brought in loads of kitchen equipment and was always very, kind of very set on kind of ordering the food in advance for restaurants, picking restaurants, all these kind of things.
I mean, the whole thing is that he presented himself as this, it was a fictional character, but he was too perfect almost. That she said that he cooked every night, continuously bringing her gifts. I mean, as well as being very friendly with her family, all these kind of things, and then as well as sharing this traumatic event that partially Donna also shared some kind of similar trauma as well. There's all these things. I mean, you're very familiar with other undercovers, as well, but it's still shocking to hear.
It is incredibly shocking to hear. I mean, I think this thing about being too perfect. I mean, this is something we see from so many of the undercover officers in their relationships. It was just everything was a tick box. Every box was ticked. They were being this ultimate partner. And I mean, I don't want to go into it too much, but I think Donna sort of referred to it a little bit, that she's had a lot of other tragedies in life. That a relationship of 12 years had not long ended when she met Carlos Araki. That his taking advantage of her in this particular way was particularly cruel because of other things that happened in her life.
I just one thing, which was maybe this is covered because it's one of the first things she mentioned this morning, was the fact that although she's left wing, trade union rep at work, she wasn't an activist, in whatever that means in inverted commas, i.e. that she was used as a vehicle in that sense to get contact with Joe and others, which is can only imagine what that feels like. It's just you're just being used in that sense. It's just mind blowing.
It's so horrible. I mean, we've heard a similar thing with Bob Lambert and the deception of Linda Harvey. Someone who was very sort of adjunct at best to activism.
She was even more removed.
She was
than Donna.
But
it was also, I think, a lot of the. Probably going off on one a little bit now, but in terms of, we often hear that even when the women were involved, they're kind of written out of the politics.
Yes, very much.
To a certain extent, and we hear that right up to Mark Kennedy. I know that. The people read reports on him as all the women are written out of the organising. There's that side to it as well. All different aspects of misogyny and sexism seems to be demonstrated by.
I mean, we saw that really heavily with Mark Jenner just before Christmas. I mean, there was hardly any women at all in any of his reports. Yet there was, we've heard from multiple witnesses of the involvement of women in the Colin Roach Centre and other things he was involved with.
And writing Alison out of her activism, and that's what came to mind. But so there's all the whole range, it's sort of a selection box of different types of misogyny and sexism, and
no, I mean, it's that weird thing. I mean, of for somebody to be so cruel and so bigoted in so many different ways about people. I mean, it was interesting. Donna talks about one of her friends was a gay man saying that guy's homophobic, and she's like, no, he's not. He's a good person. It's like, I'm telling you, he's homophobic. I can tell. And I mean, but he obviously had, what he actually thought of these women to be so cruel to them was at the same time saying, I love you every day, and making such an effort with, it just, the mind boggles. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I can't imagine being in a relationship with someone who was that caring. Wait, full stop. But also, I can't imagine being that caring and also just having so much disdain for you at the same time. It's such a head fuck. I mean, like, you know, my heart goes out. It is really, really disturbing. Yeah, we've anything else from this morning you'd like to touch on?
No.
I mean, there is a closed session next. They're probably actually already it's currently underway, a closed session of the inquiry with Donna, talking about some stuff that is personal and private that we won't be going into, that we don't get to go in there for anyway. We will be called in for further questions, Rule 10s. It wouldn't surprise me if there aren't any Rule 10s. There might be some re-examination by her own lawyer, just to pull out a few issues that may be of interest, that they're keen for the inquiry to look at. I can't imagine any further Rule 10s from further afield are going to come from anything. Just overall, your impression of Donna as a witness?
I mean, I kind of open with that, just saying how eloquent.
Yeah.
And bringing it, but her evidence seems very definitive, especially with the contested points that Saraki's lying about. It's very like there's no like hesitation or like, oh, well, I'm not sure. I mean, she's very clear about the dates. One of the other thing we do, was like the date of that they spent together on which year it was, and New Year's Eve.
Yes, yeah.
And I think he probably fucked up a bit.
He fucked up massively there.
Basically, he said it was it
was a year later.
Yeah. And so obviously that's something that probably I'm pretty sure the inquiry would be able to definitively do. So I think he's messed up on that front. So
yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things. I mean, she talked about how she got so obsessed when she found out she was an undercover cop and put a lot of time and effort into getting the timeline of events, down in order to write the book. I mean, I think she has come across incredibly credibly and incredibly strongly in terms of the detail in that sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I mean, he doesn't specifically contest these dates, but he does say things like, "Oh, I've only been seeing it for 2 months." Well, it had been 3.
Yeah,
we know that for sure. There were so many things where he's just like he's obviously not thought about it too much. I mean, we had the same thing with Jim Boyling, where he was like going, "Oh yeah, well he didn't contest the actual dates of things happening," but he goes, "That was only like 14 months." It's like, no, it wasn't. It was this much longer, and so it goes with Saraki. Carlos Saraki will be giving evidence next week. We have 4 days of questioning. Tomorrow we have Lindsay giving evidence. She was another woman who Carlos Saraki deceived into an intimate personal sexual relationship. I imagine that's going to be equally traumatic. She hasn't written a book, so you can't buy one. Go out and buy a Small Town Girl if you haven't already. Check out the audiobook. Check out the audio of this morning. I might do another video at the end of the day if there's any further questions for Donna. It may be that there's not. Maybe someone wants to jump on a video with me. I'll do it so in that case, but otherwise this may just be it for the day. Anything else you'd like to add?
That's all.
Thanks for joining us. Join us again if there's no video later on. Join us again tomorrow. Maybe join us later on if there is one. And thanks for now. Bye.